Picture this. A man shuffles onto a stage. His shirt looks like it's lost a fight with breakfast. His beard is patchy, his hair uncombed, and he coughs like his body is trying to sabotage him. He stutters, he twitches, he fidgets, and yet out of this mess comes philosophy so sharp it slices through the noise of modern life like broken glass. This is Slavoj Žižek, the philosopher who shouldn't exist, but somehow does. The clown, the prophet, the meme, the voice of a collapsing world. Žižek was born in Ljubljana, back when Slovenia was still part of socialist Yugoslavia. He grew up in a system that promised utopia while practicing surveillance, conformity, and state propaganda. But instead of swallowing the slogan, Žižek went digging for the machinery underneath. He fell in love with Lacanian psychoanalysis, Hegel's dialectics, and Marx's fury. Philosophy for him wasn't just abstract, it was an autopsy of society, a way to lay bare the guts of ideology and poke around inside. But here's the miracle, or maybe the horror. Žižek made this autopsy funny. He doesn't speak like a philosopher, he speaks like a stand-up comic possessed by demons. He tells obscene jokes, riffs on movies, explains politics through toilets, drags you from Donald Duck to Donald Trump in a single breath. He'll use the Matrix as a philosophical text or Coca-Cola as proof of how capitalism infects desire. Žižek knows that in order to face the unbearable truths of ideology, you need to laugh, or you won't be able to look at them at all. This is why he became more than a philosopher. He became viral. YouTube clips of him rambling about German plumbing rack up millions of views. He's the Elvis of cultural theory, the philosopher of the internet age. His persona, sloppy, chaotic, borderline unlistenable, became the perfect mirror of our world. Messy, contradictory, constantly on the edge of collapse. In an era where philosophy is packaged into neat TED Talks and corporate wellness manuals, Žižek is jagged and dangerous. And that's the question people always ask. Is Žižek serious, or is he a clown? Is he dismantling ideology, or is he just another piece of the spectacle? His fans worship him as a radical genius. His critics dismiss him as a joke. But maybe the paradox is the point. In a world built on contradictions, maybe the only philosopher worth listening to is the one who embodies contradiction in every word, every gesture, and every cough. Žižek once said, "The true courage is to admit that the light at the end of the tunnel is not the light of heaven, but the headlight of a train coming toward us." That's Žižek distilled. He doesn't give us comfort or hope, he gives us catastrophe, but with laughter. He doesn't ask us to dream of escape. He forces us to see how ideology holds us captive even when we know it, and somehow, by laughing at the horror, we survive it. So this episode isn't just about Žižek the man, it's about Žižek as a symptom, as a mirror of our own contradictions. It's about why we need a philosopher who makes us laugh while dragging us through despair. In the circus of modern life, maybe the only philosophy worth hearing comes from the clown stumbling across the stage, pointing at the burning tent and telling us a joke we can't stop laughing at, even as the smoke closes in. To understand Slavoj Žižek, you have to begin in the rubble of a world that no longer exists. Not America, not London, not the familiar capitalist circus, but a small city in what used to be Yugoslavia. Ljubljana, Slovenia. It's the kind of place that wouldn't normally spit out a global cultural icon. Grey apartment blocks, socialist propaganda posters curling on concrete walls, factories buzzing with the machinery of a utopia promised but never delivered. That was Žižek's childhood. Born in 1949, Žižek grew up surrounded by a system that pretended to be eternal. Tito's Yugoslavia was supposed to be the socialist experiment that worked. Not quite the iron boot of Stalin's Soviet Union, not quite the chaos of Western capitalism, but some strange hybrid where people could believe they were building a future beyond exploitation. Only it didn't feel like that from the inside. It felt like a performance, like everyone was pretending to believe in something already rotting. And for a boy like Žižek, sharp-eyed, strange and perpetually alienated, the cracks were everywhere. He would later say that ideology works not when people truly believe, but when they act as if they believe. Everyone knows the slogans are hollow, but they keep chanting them anyway. This is the first seed of his philosophy. The ideology doesn't need truth to survive. It just needs bodies going through the motions. You can laugh at the party, mock its leaders, make cynical jokes over cheap beer in your apartment, but as long as you show up to the rallies, as long as you nod when the slogans are shouted, the system holds. In other words, you don't need to believe in ideology, ideology believes in you. This is where Žižek begins to look a little like Santa Claus. Not the Coke commercial Santa Claus, but the terrifying mythic figure behind the costume. Santa doesn't need you to believe in him, he already knows if you've been bad or good. He's already written himself into the structure of your childhood reality. You can stop believing in Santa, but the presence, or the absence of them, keep showing up under the tree. That's ideology. That's how Žižek describes it. It's not what you think, it's the structure that thinks for you. Now imagine being a young man in that environment. Žižek studied philosophy in Ljubljana, but he quickly found himself in trouble. He was considered too unorthodox for the party line. His early work was steeped in psychoanalysis, French theory, and Western philosophy, suspicious imports for a regime that wanted its intellectuals to stick to safe Marxist orthodoxy. Žižek was even denied a university post at first because his dissertation didn't toe the ideological line. He was, from the beginning, a problem. Too Marxist for the West, too psychoanalytic for the East, too messy for anyone. But he didn't stop. Instead, he went underground, intellectually. He kept writing, translating, publishing. In the 1980s, he went to Paris and studied under Jacques-Alain Miller, Lacan's son-in-law and heir to the Lacanian psychoanalytic empire. This was the crucible where Žižek's brain really mutated. He fused Marx and Lacan, politics and psychoanalysis. From Marx, he took the critique of capitalism and class struggle. From Lacan, he stole the language of desire, the unconscious, the real. Out of this Frankenstein marriage, he built the philosophy that would later make him infamous. So here's the key. Marx taught him to look at systems. Lacan taught him to look at what those systems hide. Marx says capitalism runs on exploitation. Lacan says our unconscious runs on repression and desire. Žižek glued these insights together and said, ideology isn't just what you think you believe, it's the invisible fantasy that makes your reality tolerable. It's the reason you keep buying shit that you don't need, the reason you stay in jobs that you hate, the reason you laugh at memes about the system being broken while still waking up to participate in it tomorrow. This is what makes Žižek a kind of Marxist Santa Claus. He shows up in your intellectual living room, wheezing and twitching, lugging a sack of concepts, only instead of toys, he dumps psychoanalytic trauma down your chimney. At least he doesn't shit down it. He says, you already know the system is broken, but look, here's why you keep going along with it. Here's why even your jokes, your cynicism, your disbelief, all of it feeds the machine. You think you're in on the joke, but the joke is in on you. There is something perversely fatherly about it too. Žižek's persona is absurd, clownish, but it also carries a strange warmth. He laughs at himself, he mocks his own tics, he embraces his ridiculousness. In a way, he's like the weird uncle who shows up drunk to Christmas dinner but ends up telling you the only truth you'll hear all year. And because he frames it in humor, you can listen to it. You can even enjoy it. That's Žižek's sleight of hand. He makes you laugh while dismantling your reality. But don't mistake this for lightness. Behind the jokes is steel. Behind the laughter is fury. Žižek is a Marxist in the old sense. He doesn't just want to describe the world, he wants to change it. He sees capitalism not as progress, not as freedom, but as a grotesque, self-devouring system that shapes our very desires. He says repeatedly that the real tragedy today is not that people believe too much, but that they don't believe enough. That we all act as though capitalism is eternal, but there is no alternative. That the end of the world is easier to imagine than the end of the system. This is where Ljubljana matters. Coming from Yugoslavia, Žižek didn't inherit the same blind faith in capitalism that Western philosophers did. He had seen communism up close. He knew it failed, knew it collapsed under its own contradictions. But because he'd seen both systems, East and West, he could see that capitalism wasn't the natural order either. It was just another ideology, just another structure propped up by fantasy, repression, and cynicism. If the West saw him as too Marxist and the East saw him as too psychoanalytic, it's because he refused to play by either rulebook. By the time Žižek exploded onto the global stage in the late 1980s and early 90s, he was perfectly positioned. The Berlin Wall had fallen, the Cold War was over, and the West was declaring victory. Capitalism was eternal, history was finished. Francis Fukuyama, the cheerleader of neoliberal triumph, was telling everyone to go home, the story was over. Žižek walked into that party like a drunk Santa Claus and said, "No, history isn't over, the nightmare is just beginning." And he was right. That's how Žižek became who he is, not just a philosopher, but a symptom of his time. Born in the twilight of communism, raised in its hypocrisies, educated in psychoanalysis and armed with Marx, he emerged as the one philosopher able to see through both sides of the Cold War fantasy. He wasn't West, he wasn't East, he was something else. Lugging this sack of contradictions, coughing and laughing as he handed out gifts nobody wanted but everyone needed. The knowledge that ideology is inside us, structuring our lives, shaping our desires, and that we can't escape it just by mocking it. In Žižek's Ljubljana childhood, the slogans were already collapsing. People were already laughing at the system while still participating in it. That's the pattern of our time. And that's why Žižek, ridiculous as he appears, matters. He isn't an outsider looking in, he's an insider who's already lived through one collapsing system, watching another one repeat the same mistakes, only dressed in different costumes. So when you hear him ranting about toilets or Coca-Cola, when you laugh at his mess, remember, this is the Marxist Santa Claus of Ljubljana. He's coughing, sweating and stumbling, but he's dragging that truth down your chimney. Philosophy has always loved its solemnity. Plato in his cave, Kant on his daily walks, Heidegger staring into the Black Forest. The philosopher is supposed to be severe, deliberate, embalmed in seriousness. Žižek shatters that image. His philosophy bursts out of him like a drunk friend at a wedding. His delivery is part rant, part stand-up routine, part exorcism. He doesn't teach, he performs. And at the center of that performance is the joke. Žižek tells jokes the way priests used to quote the Bible. He tells them obsessively, compulsively, often repeating the same ones across decades. If you've seen him once, you've probably heard his old favorite about the man convinced he's a grain of seed, taken to an asylum, cured by doctors who assure him he is not a seed but a man. He leaves the asylum, only to see a chicken waiting outside. Terrified, the man runs back in. "Doctor, I know I am not a grain of seed, but does the chicken know it?" For Žižek, this is ideology in miniature. We may know rationally that we are free, that we don't believe in the myths that structure our lives, but the world, the system, the chicken, acts as if those myths are real, so we live by them anyway. This is how Žižek weaponizes the joke. It's never just funny, it's a Trojan horse for trauma. The laugh is the anesthetic that lets you swallow the unbearable truth. He once said, "If you take away the joke from my work, you lose the philosophy." For Žižek, humor is not decoration, it's the delivery system. Take his obsession with toilets. Most philosophers might talk about justice, freedom, or beauty. Žižek wants to talk about where you shit. In one of his most infamous riffs, he compares toilet designs in Germany, France, and the United States. The German toilet holds the waste on a ledge before it is flushed, so you can inspect your shit. The French toilet sends it away immediately, hiding it from view. The American toilet suspends it in water, so you can neither ignore it nor inspect it fully. For Žižek, this isn't trivial. It's ideology carved into porcelain. It's how nations relate to waste, to what they repress, to what they can't stand to look at. The joke lands because it's absurd, but also because it makes you see ideology in the most intimate, ridiculous corners of life. Or consider his favorite films. Žižek doesn't quote Aristotle, he quotes Hitchcock. He doesn't unpack Descartes, he unpacks the Matrix. For him, cinema is not entertainment, it's philosophy by other means. He calls The Matrix the film of our time, not because it's cool, but because it illustrates perfectly how ideology works. The pill, the illusion, the layers of reality. This is what Lacan and Marx were talking about all along. Pop culture becomes scripture in Žižek's gospel. He'll talk about They Live and Kung Fu Panda with the same intensity most philosophers reserve for Hegel. He collapses the distance between high theory and low culture. For Žižek, Mickey Mouse can explain Marx better than Marx ever could. And then there are the dirty jokes. Žižek loves obscenity. He tells them with that gleeful, coughing laugh, the kind that makes you wonder if you should be embarrassed for him. But these jokes aren't random. They are obscene for a reason. They break politeness. They cut through ideology. Politeness, after all, is ideology's favourite weapon. It hides the truth behind etiquette, behind civility, behind smooth surfaces. The dirty joke slices through that. It's the crack that reveals the real, the repressed, the thing you don't want to admit. Consider one of his recurring examples, the way cynicism actually fuels ideology rather than breaking it. Žižek loves to illustrate this with jokes. A totalitarian state tells its citizens, you must believe in the leader. But everyone knows the leader is a fraud. People mock him, laugh at him, make cynical remarks behind his back. But they still obey. The joke doesn't free them, it sustains them. It lets them survive the contradiction of living in a lie. Laughter is the lubricant that keeps ideology running. Žižek takes this everyday observation and turns it into a razor-sharp diagnosis. It's not the serious believer who keeps systems alive, it's the cynical joker. This is the paradox of the Žižekian joke. It exposes ideology by reenacting it. It reveals the truth while also showing you why that truth doesn't save you. You can laugh at capitalism all you want, you'll still go to work tomorrow. You can mock politics, you'll still cast your vote or file your taxes. The joke doesn't destroy ideology, it reveals your complicity in it. And this is why Žižek's lectures feel like stand-up shows from another dimension. He's not trying to entertain you, he's trying to trap you. The laughter is bait, and once you laugh, he pulls the rug out and shows you what you're really laughing at. A Žižek lecture is full of punchlines, but every punchline is a scalpel. He doesn't want you comfortable, he wants you unsettled. The joke is the knife slipped under your ribs while you're distracted. Some critics hate this. They say Žižek is just a clown, a parody of a philosopher. They accuse him of recycling the same stories, the same jokes over and over again. And it's true, he does, but repetition is part of the performance. By repeating, he enacts the very structure of ideology itself, the compulsion to repeat, the return of the repressed. The joke doesn't lose its power by being told again, it gains it. Each retelling becomes a ritual, liturgy. And there's another thing. Žižek doesn't just use jokes to explain philosophy. He uses philosophy to explain jokes. For him, the obscene anecdote is not beneath theory. It is theory. Jokes expose what polite discourse can't. They say the unsayable. They rip off the mask. In Freud's terms, they're the royal road to the unconscious. In Žižek's world, they're the royal road to ideology. So when he riffs about toilets or Coca-Cola or Hollywood blockbusters, he is not slumming. He's digging where ideology hides. He's showing us that the things we dismiss as trivial, as low, as vulgar, those are precisely the places where ideology thrives. Philosophy that avoids the joke, that avoids the obscene, that avoids the ridiculous, is philosophy that avoids reality. This is why Žižek is so necessary today. In a culture drowning in irony, in memes, in cynicism, he takes the joke seriously. He treats laughter as a battlefield. He understands that humor is not a distraction from ideology, it's its bloodstream. If you want to fight the system, you have to fight in the territory of jokes, memes, comedy, embarrassment. Otherwise, you're fighting a ghost while the real monster laughs behind you. In Žižek's gospel, the joke is not just entertainment, it's revelation. It's ideology made flesh, exposed in the punchline. And this is what makes him both infuriating and indispensable. He's not a philosopher despite the jokes, he's a philosopher because of them. If you strip away the jokes, the sweaty chaos of Žižek's delivery, what you find at the core is not Marx, not politics, and not even comedy. It's Lacan. Jacques Lacan, the French psychoanalyst who reimagined Freud through the riddles of language and mathematics, is the ghost haunting every Žižek sentence. Žižek is Lacan's most infamous disciple, the one who smuggled psychoanalysis into the heart of politics, the one who made Lacan relevant to capitalism and cinema and Coca-Cola. If you don't get Lacan, you don't get Žižek. So what did Lacan give him? 3 categories: the imaginary, the symbolic, and the real. Think of them as 3 overlapping dimensions of human experience. The imaginary is the world of images, illusions, narcissistic fantasies, basically the playground of Instagram before Instagram existed. The symbolic is the world of language, law, structures, the networks that organize society and our place in it. But then there's the real. The real is not reality as you normally think it. It's what resists symbolization. It's the trauma, the unassimilable kernel that can't be spoken or pictured. It's the horror that escapes both the imaginary and the symbolic. It's what returns again and again to disturb your sense of order. Žižek takes this and builds his entire philosophy around it. For him, ideology isn't just lies told by governments or corporations. It's the symbolic order itself. The entire structure of language, rituals, customs, jokes, and fantasies that hold the world together. It doesn't just trick you. It organizes your desire, and behind it lurks the real, the traumatic void that ideology hides from you, the impossible truth you can't face directly. Now the kicker is that you can know that ideology is lying to you, you can see through it, you can even mock it, laugh at it, treat it with cynicism, but it doesn't matter, because ideology is not about what you know, it's about what you do. It's about the rituals you repeat, the fantasies you inhabit, the things you act as though you believe even when you don't. This is Žižek's famous phrase. They know very well what they are doing, and yet they do it. Cynicism doesn't free you, it's the very mechanism that keeps you trapped. Take an example Žižek loves, the relationship we have with money. If you ask people, does money have intrinsic value? They'll laugh. They'll say, of course not, it's just paper, just numbers on a screen. But when they go to the bank, when they obsess over their salary, when they panic at losing a job, they act as if money is sacred, real, powerful. The ideology works not because people believe in it, but because they live it. They act as if it were true. That gap, that distance between what you know and what you do is where ideology thrives. And behind that gap is trauma. The real is always there, lurking, threatening to rupture the symbolic order. That's why ideology matters. It gives us a fantasy screen to cover the real, to protect us from trauma. In Lacan's terms, ideology provides us with a way to desire safely. In Žižek's terms, ideology keeps us from staring directly into the abyss. This is why Žižek obsesses over films like The Matrix. For him, Neo's choice isn't really between illusion and reality. It's between 2 different forms of illusion. The Matrix itself is ideology, the screen that covers the real. But leaving the Matrix doesn't give you the real, it just gives you another fantasy, another symbolic structure. The real is always out of reach, always traumatic. You never get the raw truth, you only get ways of organizing your distance from it. Žižek uses this framework to explain why systems like capitalism are so resilient. It's not that people don't see the exploitation, they see it, they joke about it, they complain. But they keep going because their very desires are structured by the system. It tells them not just what to buy, but how to desire, how to fantasize. Capitalism doesn't simply sell you a product. It sells you the fantasy that the product will complete you. Coca-Cola isn't just sugar water, it's the real thing. The emptiness becomes the desire itself. The commodity tells you, I'm empty, but that emptiness is what you're craving. The more you consume, the thirstier you feel. That endless loop of desire is ideology at its purest. And here's where the trauma comes in. We never want to confront the emptiness directly. We never want to see the real. It's too much. So ideology keeps us circling around it, protected by fantasy. In politics, this takes the form of scapegoats, stories, and myths. We tell ourselves comforting narratives about freedom, democracy, and progress, while the traumatic real of exploitation, inequality, and ecology collapse festers underneath. Žižek loves to tell the story of cynical distance in Eastern Europe under communism. Everyone knew the system was corrupt, that the leaders were incompetent, people mocked it constantly, but they still obeyed, still participated. The ideology didn't need true believers, it needed participants. The joke itself was part of the system's survival, and when the system finally collapsed, people didn't suddenly wake up to the truth. They simply moved into a new ideology, one called capitalism, which they embraced with the same cynical distance. This is why Žižek's lectures always feel haunted. Behind the jokes and movie riffs is the constant reminder of the real. He laughs, but his laugh is nervous, painful, sometimes hysterical. He stutters, he repeats himself, his body performs trauma even as his words dissect it. Žižek himself is a symptom, an embodiment of the contradictions he describes. He's the clown who reveals that the laughter is always covering a scream. And maybe this is why he resonates so deeply with audiences, because we all feel it. We all sense that beneath our everyday routines, our rituals of work and consumption, our jokes and memes, there is something unbearable lurking. Economic collapse, political violence, the end of the world feels closer every day. And yet we go on scrolling, shopping, streaming, laughing. Žižek doesn't offer escape from this. He doesn't say, here's the solution. He says, this is how ideology works. This is why you laugh while the train approaches. In one sense, Žižek is cruel. He rips away the illusions and shows you the void behind them. But in another sense, he's merciful. Because by laughing, by making the unbearable ridiculous, he gives you a way to survive looking at it. You can't confront the real directly, but you can catch glimpses of it through the cracks, through the joke, through the obscene anecdote. That's the gospel Žižek preaches. The truth is unbearable, but maybe we can live with it if we learn how to laugh at the trauma that structures us. Žižek loves disaster, not in the way Hollywood loves it, with special effects and catharsis, but in the way a psychoanalyst loves a patient's recurring nightmare. He watches the end of the world the way a therapist watches a child draw the same monster over and over. For Žižek, every apocalypse movie, every ecological panic, every zombie outbreak is a symptom. And the symptom is this: it is easier for us to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. That line, attributed to Žižek, though Mark Fisher sharpened it too, has become a kind of mantra for our age. It explains why Netflix churns out endless dystopias, why bookstores are clogged with climate fiction, why YouTube is a wasteland of prepper fantasies and conspiracy theories. We are addicted to apocalypse. We rehearse it daily. We fantasize about collapse. But what we cannot fantasize, what we cannot imagine, is a world beyond capitalism. The market, the commodity, the endless cycle of desire, that we treat as eternal. Žižek digs into this with his usual arsenal of jokes. Take disaster films. In a typical Hollywood apocalypse, asteroids or aliens or like climate falling apart, the system itself remains unquestioned. Governments still function, families still cling to traditional values. Even as cities burn, the fantasy of capitalism remains intact. The market may pause, but it waits patiently in the background to resume its circulation. The catastrophe is never capitalism itself. It's always something external, something we can blame on nature, on fate, on acts of God. But what if the catastrophe is the system? What if the end of capitalism is the apocalypse we can't picture? Žižek insists that this is our blind spot. We can imagine zombies devouring the living, machines overthrowing humanity, even the planet itself rejecting us, but not the collective decision to organize our lives differently. That is the trauma, the real we can't face. The end of capitalism is the unimaginable. This is why ecological crises fascinate him. He argues that climate change is the ultimate ideological battleground. Everyone knows the world is on fire. Everyone jokes about it. Memes of drowning cities circulate as entertainment. But instead of confronting the real that our economic system is driving us toward collapse, we displace it. We dream of apocalypses instead of revolution. Žižek loves to cite the paradox of environmental politics. People will gladly watch The Day After Tomorrow and then buy a bigger SUV. The knowledge doesn't stop the desire. Ideology is stronger than fact. Žižek also points out how capitalism itself adapts to crisis. Far from being threatened by apocalypse, capitalism commodifies it. Organic food, eco-friendly packaging, disaster prep industries, all are new markets. Even climate guilt gets commodified. You can buy carbon offsets the way you buy indulgences from a medieval priest. Žižek calls this ecology as ideology. The system sells us fantasies of saving the world while ensuring nothing changes. And then there's the obsession with zombies, which I can entirely appreciate. For Žižek, zombies are capitalism made flesh. They are consumers stripped of all illusions, pure appetite, wandering endlessly with no goal but more. In his words, zombies represent the ultimate proletariat, the living dead whose only function is to devour. They are us without fantasy, us without ideology, and yet we love to watch them because they allow us to stage our own destruction at a safe distance. This is the apocalyptic fetish Žižek diagnoses. We replay the end of the world as a spectacle, as entertainment, so we don't have to confront the end of the system that organizes our lives. Apocalypse becomes a way to avoid revolution. As long as we keep dreaming of asteroids and zombies, we don't have to imagine something as simple and as terrifying as not living under capitalism. But Žižek doesn't stop at movies, of course. He looks at politics too. Take the 2008 financial crash. For a moment, it looked like capitalism had cracked. Banks collapsed, markets plummeted, governments panicked. I quietly cheered in the corner. People said it was the end of neoliberalism. But what happened? Capitalism came back stronger. The very system that caused the collapse was bailed out by governments, reinforced, resurrected. The crash wasn't a death, it was a transformation. Capitalism feeds on crisis, mutates with it, thrives on it. It doesn't just survive catastrophe, it requires it. And this is where Žižek's apocalyptic obsession turns darker. Because he insists the catastrophe is already here. The apocalypse isn't some future event, it's the present. Ecological collapse, economic instability, political polarization, mass surveillance. These are not warnings. They are symptoms of a system already in its death throes. The fantasy is not that the apocalypse will come, but that it hasn't happened yet. Žižek says we live in the catastrophe already, we just don't recognize it because ideology keeps us entertained. This explains his fascination with comedy in the face of disaster. His lectures are littered with jokes about the end of the world, about ecological doom, about social collapse. He isn't mocking the seriousness of the crises, he's mocking the way we respond to them. We laugh at collapse because it's unbearable otherwise. We meme the apocalypse because it's easier than changing. Žižek is the philosopher who takes the joke seriously enough to show us how it protects the system. But he also warns us. The apocalypse fetish is dangerous. By fantasizing endlessly about collapse, we dull ourselves to action. We watch the fire, we laugh at the fire, we post pictures of the fire on Instagram, but we never pick up a bucket of water. The fantasy replaces reality. Apocalypse becomes the opium of the masses. And yet Žižek refuses the easy answer. He doesn't say, here is the utopia, here is the new system, the new way out. He mocks that too. He distrusts quick solutions, green capitalism, techno fixes. He insists the first step is to accept the despair, to face the catastrophe without fantasy. He wants us to admit that maybe there is no rescue, no happy ending, no perfect future waiting. Only then, he suggests, can we begin to think something truly new. This is Žižek at his most terrifying, and his most necessary. Because in a world drowning in false optimism, in tech utopias, he is the one philosopher screaming, stop fucking lying to yourselves. Stop imagining salvation. Start by admitting the collapse is here. The headlight at the end of the tunnel is not heaven, it's the train about to crush us. That's the apocalyptic gospel of Žižek. capitalism survives by selling us fantasies of its own destruction. We consume the apocalypse the way we consume everything else, as spectacle, as commodity, as entertainment. And until we can break that cycle, until we stop treating the end of the world as something we can laugh at in the theatre, we remain trapped. At this point, the question starts to claw at us. What exactly is Žižek? A philosopher? A comedian? A prophet of doom? Or just a bizarre viral sideshow we mistake for wisdom because he's funny and foreign and unkempt? Žižek himself seems to lean into all of these roles at once, as though his entire existence is one long practical joke at the expense of philosophy. And yet, that's the paradox. By making himself look like a clown, Žižek may be the only philosopher brave enough to reveal the grotesque circus that is our world. Watch him perform. His lectures look like meltdowns in real time. He repeats himself, forgets where he is, then suddenly detonates a line so sharp it silences the room. His body is always betraying him, twitching, sweating, hiccuping. Žižek doesn't look like a prophet. He looks like the guy who slept under the prophet's podium. But this mess is part of the act. Or maybe it's not an act at all. Maybe Žižek is simply what happens when a philosopher lets ideology fully infect the body. He is contradiction made flesh. This is the heart of the Žižek paradox. He undermines his own authority at every step, and yet in doing so, he gains a kind of authority no polished intellectual could ever achieve. Imagine a TED Talk speaker, rehearsed, sleek, standing under perfect lighting, telling you a digestible vision of the future. Now imagine Žižek, stumbling, muttering, telling a dirty joke about toilets and then ripping open the very structure of your reality. Which one feels like truth? Which one feels like propaganda? Žižek's ridiculousness makes him trustworthy. His clownishness becomes his armor. But it's not just performance. Žižek's ideas themselves are paradoxes. He insists ideology is everywhere, even in the ways we mock ideology. He insists apocalypse is already here, yet we treat it like entertainment. He insists we know the system is broken, but act as though it will last forever. He laughs at utopian visions, yet refuses to stop thinking beyond the system. His philosophy offers no neat solution, no redemption arc, no 10-step plan. He offers contradiction as the only honest account of reality. And this is what infuriates his critics. To them, Žižek is a fraud, recycling the same Lacanian riffs, the same Marxist punchlines, the same movie references for decades. He's a performance, not a thinker. They accuse him of being a philosophy clown for the YouTube generation, a meme factory disguised as theory. They point to his jokes, his obscenity, his incoherence as proof that he's not serious. But here is the counterpunch. Maybe that's the point. Maybe philosophy today can't be serious in the old sense. Maybe in a world where politicians are memes, where capitalism itself is absurdist theatre, where the apocalypse is packaged as a Netflix binge, the only philosopher who fits the moment is one who embraces the ridiculous. Žižek's clownishness is not a failure, it's fidelity to the absurdity of our time. To be polished, smooth and consistent, that would be the real lie. Žižek himself plays into this tension. He mocks himself constantly. He calls himself a monster, a joke, a failed subject. He seems to enjoy his own incoherence. He performs his contradictions instead of resolving them. In psychoanalytic terms, he identifies with the symptom. He is not the cure for ideology, he is the disease speaking out loud, and by embodying the symptom, he makes it visible. This is why people flock to him. Not because he offers answers, but because he shows us what honesty looks like in a dishonest age. Honesty isn't clean, it's not neat, it stutters, it contradicts itself. Žižek's clownish performance is not a distraction from his philosophy, it is his philosophy. He is living proof of the contradictions he describes. Watching him is like watching ideology glitch in real time. There's also something profoundly democratic about his style. By joking, by riffing on movies, by talking about toilets, he drags philosophy out of the ivory tower and throws it into the mud of everyday life. He refuses the polished elitism of academia. He refuses to make philosophy clean and respectable. Instead, he makes it dirty, ridiculous, embarrassing. And that's how he makes it accessible. He doesn't dumb it down, he infects you with it. He laughs you into understanding. But there is a dangerous flip side. By being so entertaining, Žižek risks becoming spectacle. He risks being consumed the way we consume everything else, in clips, in memes, in out-of-context punchlines. People share his jokes without ever reading his books. They laugh at him the way they laugh at late-night comedians. He becomes ideology's favorite trick, critique packaged as entertainment. In this sense, Žižek is both prophet and pawn. He exposes the system, but he also becomes part of it. His clownishness is both weapon and weakness. And maybe this is the deepest paradox of all. Žižek knows this. He knows he's a meme. He knows his lectures are consumed as entertainment. He mocks it constantly, but he doesn't stop. He keeps performing, keeps clowning, keeps repeating himself. Because maybe the truth is this: philosophy today can only exist as spectacle. Maybe the clown is the only one who can smuggle in the prophecy. Think of the medieval fool in the king's court. He was the only one allowed to mock the king, to speak the truth through jokes, to embody contradiction without being punished. That's Žižek. He is the fool in the court of global capitalism, allowed to joke about its absurdity, to expose its hypocrisies, to make us laugh at our complicity. And in laughing, we glimpse the truth. The clown becomes the prophet. So what is Žižek? He's not just one thing. He's a paradox, an unstable hybrid. He's philosopher and clown, prophet and meme, symptom and diagnosis. To dismiss him as a clown is to miss the point. To worship him as a prophet is to miss the point too. The point is the contradiction itself. He embodies the chaos of our world, the laughter covering despair, the trauma hidden beneath jokes. In the end, Žižek is not here to save us. He's not here to give us solutions. He's here to perform our contradictions back to us, to show us what we already are. And maybe that's enough. Because in a world drowning in lies, sometimes the truth looks like a sweaty man telling dirty jokes about toilets while the apocalypse creeps closer. Sometimes the only way to glimpse prophecy is through the clown. So here we are, at the end of this ride through Slavoj Žižek's carnival of contradictions. We've walked the streets of Ljubljana with the Marxist Santa Claus, sifted through dirty jokes and toilets, peeked at the traumatic reel behind ideology, and stared down the apocalypse fetish of a culture that would rather imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism. And standing in the middle of it all is Žižek himself, sweating, stuttering, laughing, our clown, our prophet, our symptom. The paradox of Žižek is that you can never pin him down. Try to call him a philosopher and he slips into jokes. Call him a comedian and he blindsides you with theory. Call him a fraud and he'll agree with you, but keep talking until you realize you're the punchline. That slipperiness isn't failure, it's the point. Žižek's whole experience is a performance of the contradictions he describes. He doesn't solve them, he embodies them. But what does that mean for us? It means Žižek isn't here to comfort us with answers. He's not Kant with his little tidy systems. He's not Plato sketching eternal forms. He's here to embarrass us, to make us laugh at our own cynicism, to force us to admit that ideology doesn't disappear just because we see through it. We joke about capitalism, we mock politicians, we binge apocalypse fantasies, but we keep living inside the same system, acting as if it will last forever. Žižek's gift, if you can call it that, is to rub our noses in this contradiction until it stings. And yet it's not despair he leaves us with. Not exactly. His jokes, his obscene detours, his film riffs, these aren't just distractions. They are survival mechanisms. They're ways of making the unbearable visible. Laughter is the anesthetic that lets us look at trauma without collapsing. The joke doesn't save us, but it keeps us conscious long enough to see where we are. That's Žižek's version of hope. Not the promise of utopia, but the courage to face catastrophe without flinching. In a way, he's the philosopher we deserve. Every age gets the philosopher that mirrors it back. The Greeks got Plato, the Enlightenment got Kant, we got Žižek. Disheveled, incoherent, obscene, and endlessly recycled, yet somehow cutting closer to truth than anyone else. Our world is disheveled, incoherent, obscene, and endlessly recycled. Žižek is not an outsider looking in, he's the inside turned inside out, the symptom given a microphone. So is he a clown or a prophet? The answer, of course, is yes. He's both. He's the fool in the king's court, mocking the system while showing us its rot. He's the prophet who refuses salvation, who tells us the light at the end of the tunnel is the train about to hit us. He's the philosopher who proves that sometimes the only way to speak truth is to sweat, stutter, and tell dirty jokes until people realize the joke is on them. Maybe in this collapsing circus of a world, philosophy doesn't need to soothe us, doesn't need to promise redemption. Maybe it just needs to make us laugh while pointing at the fire spreading through the tent. That way, when the ashes settle, at least we'll know we didn't go quietly, we didn't go blind. We went laughing, choking, aware of the catastrophe, aware of the ideology, aware of the joke. That's Žižek's gift. That's his curse. And that's why he matters. Thank you, you beautiful lot, for joining me on this journey through the world of Slavoj Žižek. As always, if you want to comment on stuff, which I would love, I love to hear your feedback. If you want to get involved in the discussion, really want to hear from you. We have a website on Substack, a big Substack community. There's like 50 odd people. We have a Substack community at theobservingeye.com, right, which is our main website. And I'm going to be putting some more stuff on there soon. And soon, he says, like, I'm not entirely defining the time frame on that. So go and give that a visit, and you can find all of our old episodes and some other bits and pieces on there as well. And my book, which I wrote a while ago, and then I've just made free. Because why not, right? What does it matter? You can go and sign up to that website if you fancy, and you can comment on stuff, and you can find other things on there as well. Sorry, this is the marketing shill at the end. We are on Instagram, and we are on X, and we are on TikTok, and they all have the same handle, which is @TheObservingEye. I'm going to be honest, I've not put much on there lately. Like, I've been away for a few weeks, and I've really enjoyed not touching social media because it's fucking awful. But I probably should do some more marketing crap, so I'll do some show clips and shit on there as well. You can go and find those. We're on YouTube as well, which is youtube.com/@TheObservingEye, which is where all of the videos live, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I've also got an email address, which you can send me a message on. I'm open to emails if you want to wax philosophical or recommend ideas for future episodes, or just drop me a message. You can email me on david@theobservingeye.com, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Do you know what? I've only actually had people email me to sell me marketing SEO so far. So if anyone wants to email me with an actual philosophical idea, that would be nice. I'd appreciate that. Anyway, it's enough from me. Take care, everybody. Much love, and I'll catch you soon.